Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jeanette Rojas. I'm the Equity and Inclusion Program Manager in the Office of Equity and Inclusion. And our program will start with introductions and a welcome from Sharon Bland. And then we will have an open conversation with Dr. Brown and Ms. Sonya Pruitt. And we will follow that with an open dialogue with participants, and that's when we will take additional questions. You can put questions in the chat for now. I'm going to try to keep up with the chat, but just some house rules, some ground rules. We're gonna follow the program. We're gonna try not to speak over one another, so please use the chat box. And we're gonna also try to be open to different views and keep it positive, not use any hateful speech. But without further ado, I would like to introduce my boss, Sharon Bland. She is the CEIO of the Office of Equity and Inclusion. So Sharon, would you like to begin?
Sure, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining. I just have to say that this conversation and the decision to have this conversation came about from not only my conversations with the president of the college, Dr. Darian Pollard, several emails, phone calls, and text messages that I've received over the course of the past week or so of members of our community really wanting an opportunity to not just talk, but had questions about what we could do as a community and what people could do individually to help our nation heal and our community and the students that we work with and our fellow colleagues. I suffice it to say that with the death of George Floyd in my household, it really resonated and struck a major nerve in my household because of my sons seeing the video. And I'm a mother. I am a political science wonk, a former professor of African American studies, an attorney, a business owner. I have 3 sons, and this affected me deeply. And so we wanted to have this conversation today to talk about, so that other people would have an opportunity to talk as well. I'm going to, I've asked a couple of people at Montgomery College to help lead us in this conversation and give us their reflections. And so I'd like to introduce those people today. And then of course, please feel free to raise your hand to offer any comments, and we'll have some opportunity for some discussions. At the end, I will offer some recommendations that I have accumulated for action. Okay, so Dr. Andre Brown is a psychology professor at Montgomery College. His professional career highlights include not only serving as a professor at several colleges, but director of community-based mental health, educational and training facilities, a research fellow, and a member on several national boards. Dr. Brown's entrepreneurial spirit has led him to develop initiatives designed to bring critical empowerment and social justice-based framework to the fields of education, mental health, and a number of other areas. He currently lives in DC and also operates Hero Consulting, which is an independent clinical research and consulting practice. He has developed and implemented educational reentry and restorative justice services for youth and families nationally and internationally, and has really had a career steeped in restorative practices, initiatives based on global issues such as violence, homelessness, poverty, education, mass incarceration, et cetera. And I thought he would be a wonderful addition to our conversation today. I'd also like to introduce Captain Sonya Pruitt. She is not only a criminal justice professor at Montgomery College, but has served as a captain with Montgomery County Police Department for the past 28 years. She not only manages community engagement for the department, but also a school resource officer program for the Montgomery County Public Schools. Not only has she done that, but she is currently sits on the board of directors of the National Law Enforcement Officers Museum, and she is the president of the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers. And not only that, she sits on the board of directors of the Maryland Collaboration Council for Children, Youth, and Families. So I have another gentleman who's going to be joining us in our conversations today, who's also works with Montgomery College. His name is George Montgomery. And George Montgomery works in the Student Affairs Division as a student conduct officer. He served in this capacity at several colleges and universities, including Glenville State College, Clemson University, and he is also a member of, served as a member in the Gamma Mu chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha as an advisor. So without further ado, I would like to ask Dr. Brown to just share with us his reflections on the time that we are in, considering the pandemic, considering all that has happened in the past week in terms of protest, et cetera. Dr. Brown.
Well, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I thought we were going to start off with the good captain first, but I'll jump in. But no, hope everybody's doing well and feeling safe and taking care of your families and yourself. This is a very interesting time that we're all living in. It's not a new time. It's not anything that we haven't seen before. It's not something that we won't endure through, but it's definitely something that's at our front doors right now. In thinking about reflections over the whole situation, and as Ms. Bland stated, a lot of the work that I do is looking at things on a global scale. So if we're looking at communities of color, if we're looking at larger cities, regions, massive amounts of people, we look at the pandemic and how that's hitting, hundreds of thousands of people in the United States, 5 million, I think, globally. And then we also had street violence, and now we've erupted into these protests and civil unrest and all these things at once. When you move through the space, it is a lot of death, right? One of the things when the pandemic hit, the first thing that, MC did, which was very smart from the beginning, was say, hey, look, let's protect our students, let's protect our faculty, and we're gonna suspend our operations and then regroup. One of the things that we haven't done, and I'm thinking about this, in the American context, we've never said, let's suspend operations and let's regroup. Let's figure out what's going on, what's the basis, and let's make a plan. We've done that when we choose to. We did that when we put out stimulus checks. We do that when we want to say we're going to put all hands on deck whenever there is something that is important. But up until now, in the most recent history, the murdering of Black people, the systematic deconstruction of Native American folks, the inability for America and us as a community, and I'm saying us meaning everybody, to sit in silence and watch our brothers and sisters be slain, raped, murdered, killed in all different forms, has never struck the nerve to where we all said we're going to do something. And so now I think, and it's actually kind of refreshing in a weird kind of way, right? In the sense that the things that, so let me back up. One thing I realized, I thought about this morning, I was like, why am I not scared about what's going on? Then I realized, I said, I've been preparing to die since I was about 11 years old. Does that make sense? So I hit 6'3" when I was in the 9th grade. I've been as Black as I am my whole life. I come from an activist family. My dad was a preacher and with a lot of guns in the house at the same time. My mother was the same way. And so growing up, I always knew I would probably get taken out because of something other than something that I've done. And so now I'm 44, I'll be 45 this summer, and it's been the same story over and over and over again. And so the thing that there's no fear is because you're already prepared to do what you were going to do. And the thing that, and not that I want to die, I love living, right? But when you know that your life is meaningless in the context of where you live, it gives you perspective about how to operate and how to move. So no matter how many degrees, no matter how much money, how many houses, how many babies, how many grandmothers, how many people I've saved and talked about, I'm still a little Black boy from North Carolina in an N-word if you choose to call me that under your breath, or to my face, or through policy, or through relationships. And so that's a perspective that the majority of everybody I know, right, has had. And if they didn't, they got reminded of it at some point. The good thing is that perspective now is being heard by some other folks who are feeling compelled to do some action other than us. And I thought about this morning is, we were talking about looting. And I said, they always steal TVs, but everybody I know that's Black already got big TVs in their house. So Black people don't run out to steal TVs in the same way that we think that is being done. So the narrative about what we're creating, about who we are, is not the same, right? And so now we're at a point where it's that tipping point where there's no more rewards are going to come because of racism in the same way that it's been done, right? The thing about racism is that racists think they're very smart, but they're very stupid because they don't study Black people the same way or other people the way that we do. So if you know the work of Frantz Fanon, he's a psychologist, psychiatrist. He spends his life studying the white miscegenation, right? The white mind, white mentality, right? White Eurocentric oppression, and not just white people as a, but specifically racism, specifically white supremacy. And so the conversation that we're talking about is not like in the Bible, it's not about flesh and blood. It's not about who I'm seeing. I see Shelly on the screen. Shelly and I are in a fellowship. Shelly's super bright, super smart, cool lady, has a beautiful puppy, dog, and a great backyard. I ain't got no problem with Shelly. I got a problem with white supremacy, right? If anybody that falls in that category, then we got beef. And I think that's the part where once we begin to study this thing and understand it and own it, that we can't sit in silence. Like I told my friends, I'm like, you Mexican, but you voted for Donald Trump. That means you hate Mexico because he said he's going to build a wall to keep all your people out. So those type of logical things that we don't do, or we think that we're safe, or we're these movements or these positions that we're in don't impact us, that has to be wiped out across the board. And so I think that's the part where I think there's a cleansing, there's a reckoning, there's a process that's occurring. It's ugly, it's harmful, it is hard to watch and witness. We don't like seeing people get beat on TV. We don't like seeing people get murdered. But at the same time, at some point, we all have to stop the madness and figure out what we're going to do in a real way. And it has to be sustainable and real. So those are some of my initial thoughts, and hopefully it wasn't too much rambling. But that's where I'm at right now. We can figure out the rest as we go. Thank you.
Professor Pruitt.
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Brown. So for the last probably a week, I've been doing interviews on behalf of the National Black Police Association concerning George Floyd's his killing. And I have to tell you all that it has taken an emotional toll on me. I am mentally exhausted. I've had 2 separate episodes of where I couldn't stop crying. And so, but I know the value of using my medical resources. So, but mine are in the form of my girlfriends who are psychologists. Just so happens I have some who are. So I will call them. I have the benefit of having a professional and then someone who knows me personally to help walk me through this, because it's trauma. And so I want to tell people here who are not Black that trauma begins for Black people very early on when we are children. I can think of the first time I was called the N-word. I was in the 3rd grade. The boy who called me that was a white boy who was one of my classmates. And I don't know where he got the word or why he decided to use it against me, but we were standing at the corner waiting for our respective parents, and he called me the N-word, and then I had to beat him up because, you know, I was always fighting. So it was, it wasn't a big deal to lay hands on him, but that's when the trauma starts, when you start realizing that people see you differently. So we're talking about now, I'm in my 50s-ish. And so we're talking about almost 50 years of dealing with trauma in school, in the police department, in the world at large. I just gave remarks on CNN regarding the tragedy of Mr. Floyd's death. And right after I gave those comments, which were in support of the police officers, but also in support of the community, I got a phone call in the office from a Black gentleman who said, well, I won't call him a gentleman, a Black male who called me out of my name and pretty much threatened all police officers if Officer Chauvin did not get the death penalty or life in prison. That's trauma. So when you as a police officer, I'm trying to work for everybody. Sometimes you have to make a decision. Sometimes you have to pick a side. In this case, it's not mutually exclusive to be a police officer and Black, but other people will tell you that it is so. People who are Black who are looking in who don't like the police. Police officers who are on the inside who don't like the narrative of a Black officer, and in particular a Black female officer, because we're at the bottom of that criminal justice totem pole within a police department. So I wanted to share that with you because it's real, and it's high time we stop pretending like we don't have these stories and these experiences. We should tell you what they are. And if you don't understand what they are, if you're not Black, then, you know, ask questions. We don't have a problem talking about race when you're Black. It's other people who have a problem talking to us about it. So that's my introduction. Thanks for allowing me to vent a bit and emote a bit. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
One of the questions that we wanted to address was, how can we create healing spaces for our community and students of color?
I'll take a stab at that, because what I'm finding in my classes is that the majority of my students are Hispanic. Is that I always, you know, I'm always I challenge myself to make sure I always use the right terminology, because I want to say Latino, but I've been told Hispanic is fine, so that's what I'll use here. And then Black students. I rarely have white students. I might have one or two, but the rest of my class will be of color. I'm very cognizant then of how I present my material, because I know that they're there to learn, and I want to make sure that they get a holistic picture of policing, because that's really important, especially if you want to recruit Hispanic and Latino and Asian and female recruits. They need to know exactly what it is that they're walking into. So I was pleasantly surprised to find out that one of my textbooks actually had a whole chapter on policing culture. Oh my God, I was like, there's a recognition that there's a police culture. I was just floored. And so I love that chapter because I get to talk about what I really, really know about police culture. So I say all that to say, we want to have them feel included in the discussion. I don't want to be teaching at them, because many of my students have had contact with police. So they're not only there to learn about it you know, for their education, as in their degrees. They're there to learn so they can educate themselves about a system that they're not familiar with. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that they get that information. And once they realize that I'm not just a police officer, I'm a mom, you know, I've got other titles and hats that I wear, then they feel more comfortable. And then they feel comfortable in telling me their experiences and just being who they are, because that's what we want them to be at the end of the day.
Thank you. Dr. Brown?
I was going to add, I think, you know, it's funny. The people who are scared to talk about, the people who are afraid to create these learner communities are usually the faculty. The students already have these conversations. They already know what's going on. They've been trained, they know this stuff. They know this language even at a more sophisticated way. So with Professor Pruitt saying, you know, Hispanic, Latino, then there's gonna be, I was watching TV with my daughter and it's like, they have a whole debate on the show around Latinx, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm hip because I saw this on TV. And so the conversations and the thing about Montgomery, it's one of the most diverse campuses I've ever been on, right? I've got more Black male students here than I've had any other university I've taught at. And so to be able to walk into a space and see folks, see young, old, different age groups, all the diversity you can imagine, with I think it's 68,000 students on 3 campuses, we have the platform, we have the space. It takes for the leadership and the faculty and students and leadership across the board to say something is happening, let's bring this up now, right? I'm in class and before I can say a word, someone says they discredit me as a faculty member. I'm thinking this person has a mental health disorder. And then I get back to my chair and she said, no, we should have addressed this a different way. Because there's this overt sense that there's, with the level of diversity and the freedom that people have, people often use that to leverage other people into making spaces that are restricting. So you can work as a faculty to create an open dialogue, and you have students that in there that are there only. I had a student that wasn't even in school, wasn't doing nothing. He was great to be an older learner, but yet the younger students gave him deference. Well, he was completely wrong and off base 98% of the time. But the thing is, we have the space, we have the opportunity. Are we willing to get support from each other to have those conversations and know that when we do, if it's clumsy or not exactly right, we can fix it tomorrow, right? And we can come back again and say, hey, you know what? I'm sitting here and I got to go talk to my colleague. You know, I might have blew this, but tomorrow I'm gonna get them tomorrow. I'm on it. I'm back here. And the same with students. If something is happening, something sexist or racist, whatever's happening in class, everybody sees it. You lose integrity when you don't say something because they're watching who's going to be the next one because they've already done it. They've been a part of the councils at school and learned all these things. So I think it's really just having dialogue like this and giving ourselves permission to move forward in a real way where it's something where it's real. It's not just the sugarcoating because nobody wants that. No one has ever really wanted it, but people are less likely to appease us in our sugarcoating of things.
May I ask a question? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. One of the things I'd like to add to this, and we're going to have an opportunity for people to ask their questions in just a couple of minutes. There are some people have sent in their questions, and Jeanette has compiled those to ask the group. Okay. So I see Dr. Raphael, you're trying to get in. I think you sent in a question, so we will get to that. What I wanted to talk about, I wanted to pick up on a point that Dr. Brown made around our spaces and what we can control in our own classroom environments, our work environments, et cetera. So as many of you may know, I created a group for Dr. Darian Pollard, the President's Advisory Committee on Equity and Inclusion. And this group of people, about 50 people, have been working together over the past several years to develop an equity inclusion roadmap for success for the college. The thing I wanted to say about this group of people is that that people from across the college and all different roles at the college, at all levels of the college, came together, and many had not worked together before and spent time learning each other. One of the I had a chance to read the reflections of that group, and some of the most powerful things that I heard was about getting to know someone who didn't look like them, who didn't think like them necessarily, and being able to take that and bring it and use it in their day-to-day work. One person shared with me, well, it's not like I've had any friends that were necessarily people of color. I mean, you know, I say hi to them, I work with them, but they weren't my friends. And so, and then to have this opportunity to be intentional about getting to know somebody else that doesn't look like you, that doesn't have the same background as you, that you know, you may not necessarily have anything in common with, and then have an opportunity to learn from that person. And that's what it really takes, I think, in terms of moving forward, because so much of violence and hatred comes from just not even understanding a person's perspective, not even understanding where we got here, how we got here. You know, I encourage people that have not had an opportunity to read the New York Times piece 1619 to do so, because that will give you a great background in terms of, you know, of the land that we sit on right now is Native American land, right? The economics world that we have come to enjoy in America being built on the backs of slave labor. And these things are important to understand in order to do something different, right? To change the narrative. So I think we'll go to the next question. Jeanette, you're on mute if you were talking.
What must we do to create spaces for action and engagement at Montgomery College?
I think we should. So let me. Let's reframe the question, right? So I don't think we need to create space. Space is already there. People may not just be taking advantage of it. It makes sense. Like I think one of the things that happens, and that's a great question, and that is the framing of those types of questions. But then it becomes, what do we need to create for you to go advocate for someone? What do I need to give you? Right? How much coaching, how much prepping do we need? New contract? Like, what is it that you need to stop something wrong from happening? So I think it becomes now when you see something like this on the train, right? You see something, say something. You leave a bag there and nobody knows what the bag is, you might want to get off that train. If you're in a room with someone that's talking reckless and slick, you might want to move away from them. If you're not going to intervene, if you need support to do it, then you go get that support and say, how do I handle this thing that's occurring? It's beyond my understanding or my knowledge base at this time. But I don't think we need more space created. I think there's definitely things we can do institutionally to protect people when they do speak out, to protect those, to squash some of those conversations that shouldn't be happening. It's like if you're sitting there in a room and people are plotting against, and I'm saying plotting loosely and directly, right? About how they're going to get one student out of class. What are they going to do about this? Somebody needs to get those people out of the way. Individuals aren't institutions. I've heard people say that a lot. One of the things about Montgomery, which I love, and I've only been here a year, people love to say how long they've been there. I've been here 27 years, 35 years, 48 years. Some people have been here before the school's founded, which is great, right? But the thing is, you're not an institution. You work within this organization. So your years of seniority doesn't create anything more than the fact that you've gotten checks from this resource more than someone else has gotten. So I think what happens is, if you can't create, and you've been here for 45 years, that means you might have been the person that's squashing everybody else that's trying to create. So now the tide is shifting, where the creativity, the innovation, the people who are really wanting to do, the people who are reading stuff, the people who are writing, and the artists and the advocates, and the people who are struggling, oppressed people, it's rising up and it's always been. So I don't think for me, the question is, what do I need to create? If I, like, for example, in class, it happens to me all the time. Hey, any questions? Any questions? Any questions? No questions. I finish up, 15 people line up to ask me questions. Y'all wasting my time. It's a waste of time because you had plenty of opportunity. You chose not to. What do I need to do so that when I ask you for your voice or give you permission or give you space or do whatever it is you're doing, you take advantage of it? And that's something we have to work on. The other thing, and like Ms. Bland said, right? Some of us need to go to therapy. Some of y'all need to call y'all. So we all need to call some people and do some apologies. Some of us need to go back and say, you know what? You didn't even know how dirty I was, but let me tell you this, and go make up to somebody that you can't get to and clean yourself out so you can then be open to getting this thing right. Because the thing is, and it's not a beating drum, and Professor Pruitt can speak to it, I'm sure, from her experiences. When you're in that space of protecting and serving and empowering with what you're doing with your life work, you're looking at folks like, you're the problem. You are the reason why they're fighting. So I got to figure out how to get you out the way and maintain my position so I can lead on the next space. I think that's where we are right now. It's not creating space, it's taking advantage of what we got and then pushing the institution to be at the forefront. And with the leadership we have, there's no limit. We have a Black woman president at one of the biggest, most wealthiest community colleges across the board. People are still doing some foul stuff against a Black woman president during this time. What you might want to do right now, if there's beef with Dr. Pollard, is back that thing on up. Because what she can do and create is the leadership we want. So if you want more leadership, when you got the most oppressed in the hierarchy, folk, I don't know if she got any disabilities, and now you're talking about sexual orientation and all the other things that rank people in the matrix. But we got someone that's there, and we have other folks on this screen here that's there. So some of it is get away from the fear and just start acting, right? We don't need to act, teach you how to act, just do something. So sorry about that if it's too much, or too long.
No, that was right on time. Can I ask questions yet? No.
I think that Dr. Brown handled that, so.
Jeanette, you want to,
Hey,
quite a few questions came in. So why don't we go ahead and get to some of those, and we'll have, and then people on the call or on the Zoom, if you would like to chime into this or perhaps give your reflections, if you could just send a note or raise your hand or something that we can get to you.
well, I know Dr. Raphael Howell has been wanting to ask a question. So
Yes.
if you would like to ask right now.
I sent the question to you.
You
Yes.
can read it, Jeanette.
So she asked, as faculty, how do we create communities of care and healing in our online environments?
The other thing I want to add to that is, Dr. Brown, you struck a chord when you mentioned Frantz Fanon. And my mind went to Erickson and the collective unconscious. And historically, because of what we have endured for beginning 400 years ago, we have a better idea about the oppressor. We know the oppressor inside out, and in many ways better than the oppressor knows him and herself. My mind goes from the transition from our native land here by our ancestors over 400 years ago to last week, 2 weeks ago, a woman in Central Park, a white woman accusing a Black man to the extent that she called and asked for emergency assistance with assuredness that she would get it because of the Karen complex. So that is what is that we are dealing with. It is what is. It permeates the whole culture, including the Montgomery College culture. It permeates it, the Karen complex. We must bear that in mind as we move forward to effective solutions. Don't deny it, don't put your head under a blanket. understand that that is the nature of the psyche, the unconscious that we are dealing with. And Brother Cornel West addresses that as well. We have a failed experiment in democracy. It requires a hierarchical structure, which puts us on the bottom leg of the ladder of democracy. So in many ways, it is a failed experiment. Now, how do we create in an online environment, which we must all do now within the context of our responsibilities? How do we create caring environments, multicultural environments? We have all kinds of differences, exponential differences. And it's a blessing because many institutions of learning are not as integrated as ours in terms of the diversity. Right. Every which way you can think, we have diversity. How do you meet the caring needs within the context of delivering information in accord with our specializations in an online environment where people are in exponential need?
Great question. Great points. I think it's, you know, in everything you say, I agree with 100%. And I think that once we become, so the thing about the unconscious, right? Once it becomes conscious, it's no longer unconscious, right? And so what's happened is we've given ourselves liberty to say, oh, I didn't know, I didn't mean to, I didn't see, I didn't pay attention. You know, one of the things I work with Dr. Benjamin, I'm not sure if he's on or not, in one of my classes, and I learned this from the fellowship, it was, I need to make sure that I know where my students are at, particularly when COVID hit, right? So when we started going through and checking the log and seeing where we were at, I was like, okay, let me make sure that if I haven't seen you in 2 weeks, somebody needs to be able to put their hands on you. I need you to call me. I need somebody to say, because I don't know if you just sleep, I don't know if you say forget school, or if you or there's some harm that's come upon you. So being able to take that step to slow down and not be content driven, but be able to have the compassion, and I'm not the most compassionate person in the world sometimes, I'm sure, but being able to say, hey, what's going on with you as a person? I care about you as a person. Let me build a relationship with you, even though there's a hierarchy between the teacher and the student. We can have a relationship where it's based off of trust and caring, and and checking you when you're wrong, and being able to, you know, teach you. And so when we get to the point where there's an issue to be discussed, they know that everybody knows that it's coming from the right place because we've already demonstrated that in time of peace. And so I think when we start thinking about how we create this in an online environment, it's very, very tough because people are isolated more now than they've ever been before. Some people aren't protesting because they're scared to catch corona, right? Some people aren't able to do the things that we're wanting because we're isolated within our families, our homes, and we're mourning death of life from a pandemic. And so I think being able to slow it down a little bit, and once we capture the minds and build relationship in classrooms, then we can get into the content in a way that's going to stick. And so there's never, and think about it, half the time we spend in class is classroom management stuff anyway. Once you get through that, it's not that much teaching content. So if we can get the management and the other issues out the way, it gives more time for teaching. Most of the time we spend time fighting folks instead of building that relationship.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. I've been trying to write something on the chat. I couldn't, I hit enter, it doesn't enter. I keep going on and off, getting out, logging back in. And I want to say this. I was hired in NC 1992. And from 1992 up to today, I still face racism in my class. I still face people that have denigration and self-denigration issues, because no matter how good somebody is and you've spent your lifetime saying the person is not good because of the race, the person comes back denigrating him or herself Self-abasement comes in, and then they project to the other person. I've had people ask me if I'm qualified to teach that class, but that's by the way. So when we have this conversation, we need to talk to ourselves too. The professors, the counselors, those that counsel my students, that we tell them something about me and the student comes back to report to me. It's all kinds of things, because it brings a toxic atmosphere in the classroom. When somebody starts by questioning the qualification of the teacher, are you married, and all that, and then creates a situation where student doubts what you're telling them. By the mid-semester, they know that you are telling them the right thing. Then they want you to go back and teach that thing that missed when they were doubting your intelligence and your merit. So it becomes a problem. When we have this conversation, we need to have it with students too, to let them not to join in bandwagon, to let them look at themselves and be honest to themselves and pay attention to getting that education, rather than trying to, sometimes it's unconsciously done, because you see, these are very good students. These are very nice people, ordinarily. But the media, the things that are fed to them, the bandwagon, the peer pressure, sometimes they get in the way. So this conversation has to be broadened.
And how do you suggest broadening it?
Maybe we have like town meetings and town hall with students. And what I normally do in my class when I start perceiving some of this denigration, self-denigration, sometimes I bring some material that talk about culture shock. The shock you're getting because somebody that you think should be your slave is the one teaching you. Right. Sometimes I try to bring up like if it's one of those males that I think are not thinking good of themselves, I play Cry Freedom. In the movie Cry Freedom, you see Denzel Washington performing at his peak. So the average Black man that's in my class will now start identifying, oh, so we know something, you know something, except that somebody has told you that you don't know it. You begin to see self-esteem surfacing, self-confidence, and then you start talking. So we look for materials to engage them, to show them, like, somebody says you are not qualified or you are not good enough to be here, that you can be good enough, or you are good enough. Your ancestors are not all stupid. So the moment we start building that in our classrooms, two things will happen. One, the ones that are being denigrated, we begin to see themselves in a new light. The ones that are doing the denigrating, we see those people also in a new light. That somebody says, like for instance, there's this joke I tell them. Somebody asked a Nigerian in Britain, because the Nigerian was eating chicken and eating the bone, and he asked him, what do you people give to your dogs in your country? And the person said, ice cream. So now you see, he throws it back to the person. Because you come from that idea that nobody eats bone. I eat my bones. That's not why you should denigrate me. Right. Because you eat ice cream and I eat bones. So we have to have all kinds of materials to bring positive response, positive reaction, build self-esteem, build self-confidence, make the person see the other side.
Right. So I think that you've raised some excellent points. We're capturing this, and we'll send out a message to those that have participated on this call. One of the things I wanted to echo, and I've been trying to follow the chat, and several things that that are mentioned here is, okay, so how do I talk about this? What do I do? And so I think Dr. Dr. Brown may have said, when you see something, say something, or speak up when you see something on the train. I think I heard you say something about that. And this is something that I battle with literally weekly at Montgomery College. People ask me, well, can I say that? Do I have permission to ask this kind of a question? Is that racist if I ask you why you think that way? And I think the whole notion of of having a conversation and of understanding and listening to what people are saying, listening to the pain and try to understand where that's coming from, it will give us more tools in our toolbox to be able to have empathy when we hear these types of messages, and then empathy with our students. And they're just not being the bad kid in the classroom. Maybe there is X, Y, and Z going on with them. Maybe they don't have any food. Maybe they haven't eaten in 2 days. Maybe their brother just died of COVID-19. I mean, these are real issues, right? So, and we all have to be committed to taking a step back and saying, okay, let me just say, there is something going on. Let me try and help this person. And you have to do it one by one. And it is not easy. It's a lot of work, and it takes a bunch of time. And I know that I am willing to put in that time and that effort, and I'm willing to work with every single person on this call to do that. We have more questions, and we have 30 minutes. So we're gonna kind of rush through some of these. Jeanette, you wanna?
Yes, there's a few questions here. Is there anything professors of color wish that white professors would do or not do?
Can I say something? Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it's not a question of white professors doing something or not doing. Because believe me, many of them mean well, but they have never walked in that shoe. They don't even know that whatever somebody has done is interpreted as racism. Some of them don't even know it because they can't relate to it. They grew up thinking it is the norm. So it's not a question of what they do except to educate themselves. Look into other things. Like somebody is looking for selective unconscious. There are so many, if you go to the internet and put something, all these books will come out better, not for you to go to school or anything. Just a little kindness around, or if somebody says, I don't like this, even though you don't know why the person doesn't like it, that's what I do. I first of all apologize and then try to find out why it's offensive.
But let me jump in there, Professor. So I think there's a difference. Like I love my mama, and she's old and country, and she has a lot of good sayings. One of them is the difference between being ignorant and stupid, right? So you can be ignorant and don't know, right? I was working in Oregon, and they brought me to the school, and they said, Dr. Brown, I'm thinking all these deep questions with teachers. They said, we don't know what to call the black kids. Do we call them African-American, Afro-American? I said, y'all want to pay me this much for me to figure this out with y'all? Cool. Call them whatever their mama told you to call them, right? If you choose not to do what someone tells you to do, then you're stupid, or you're white supremacist, or you're racist. We get, I think in these conversations, we start coddling to a base that is not one to be coddled to. If I tell you, like we're looking at here on the chat, call me Dr. Brown, and you call me Andre, and I say, my name is Dr. Brown, and you say Andre, you ain't doing that on accident. You're explicitly doing something that's wrong, and you explicitly need to be checked, or you need to explicitly get out my room. So anything other than that, my brain doesn't work in that other way of, I told you, now you messing with me. And when you start messing with me, I got to get you. And I'm very forgiving. Like I learned myself, I'm very petty and very prideful. My pride makes me not mess with you, but the pettiness makes me remember every single thing you ever done, and you best believe I'm gonna get you back. So Dr. Pruitt, she got her home, the boy that called the N-word back in the day, she took care of that beef, and I'm sure she got a hit list of folks she gonna get soon. So the thing is, it's not about, I don't know what to do. When I tell you what to do it. If you don't like it, we can discuss it, but you're not gonna sit and tell me that what you did to me wasn't wrong when you did me wrong. We ain't cool, we got beef. And that beef is gonna last until it get resolved. When you start giving up your beef for no purpose, you have no control of yourself, right? You're spineless. So a lot of what's happening is in trying to navigate into these white spaces, we've given up our souls expecting to get rewarded when there is no reward except for death and destruction. And that's what people have sacrificed for years in the academy. So even with students. And so it's a difference. If your teachers step out of turn, you talk to them, you speak to them, they call you that one more time, you got a problem.
Right.
Right?
And you have to say it.
Moving.
Right. You have to say it. And I think that's where we have problems, where people don't, and I know this for a fact about, you know, some, and I'm just going to say this, there are a couple people that have questions about what to call people, African-American, white, black. I say white folks when I'm talking about white folks. I say black folks when I talk about black folks. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So when I've had white folks may have said to me something like, I don't know how to have this conversation with you. I'm like, well, just have it like you would have it with your sister. You know, I'm not any different just because of the color of my skin. Now, there are a couple students on this call, and I'd like to get the thoughts of some of them. I'm going to call on Ellington because he asked. So, you have the floor.
Hi, I just wanted to share something that I wrote. My name is Ellington. I used to go to Montgomery College last year as a dual enrolled student, and now I attend NYU. For sure. I have to pull up this, the actual statement itself. Hi. All right. So here we go. Don't become antagonistic to others. Now is not the time for that. But please make sure that you are prepared in whatever way that means to you to face the de facto martial law issued by 45 and to protect your families and Black bodies. My nephew turned 5 years old yesterday. My sister is pregnant. My dad is 65. I'm 19. And my grandma will soon be a great-grandmother to another great-grandchild. That is 4 generations of Black bodies, of Black lives, of Black souls that I'm concerned about before anything else. I know that many of you are probably facing a similar situation. However, many of us are. Recognize your priorities, but do not for 1 second believe that your struggle as a person of color is more or less than any other Black, Indigenous person of color. We are all fighting for someone, protesting for someone, creating content for some reason, and our collective experience will strengthen us if we understand ourselves to be equal, even in the face of systemic oppression and the socioeconomic differences. We, Black, Indigenous people of color, are all someone to somebody, and as we continue to do what we can to spread awareness and enact change in a meaningful way, I urge you to recognize that we as a collective are stronger than we could ever be divided. Hopefully this wakes people up to various levels. This movement wakes people up to various levels and demographics, to the plain fact that we're all Black people, others in a society that serves the white majority. We must mobilize and stand together with our allies to defeat the dark souls that they always taught us was Black. The color Black, however, is only doing what the Black community has always been by absorbing all the colors into a collective, something that we have long been indoctrinated to fear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Professor Sharon Bland, my name is Vilma Bond. Is it okay? Can you hear me that I speak? Hello to faculty and students. It's wonderful to just be a part of. I actually was not planning to say anything at all, but I basically have just 2 or 3 words to impart. And it's because maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, I did 1 semester at University of Maryland. And one of my classes I took was linguistics. And in linguistics, I realized, I was like, oh my God, oh my God. So I just have 3 words for us to be able to move forward effectively. One is one thing that I practice my entire life is to be colorblind. And the second thing I practiced when I came to America in 1989 is to be culturally blind. So that means that when I look at someone, I do not see the person's culture, their skin color, or anything of the sort. I basically have practiced to accept everyone, regardless of who you are, where you come from. I give a Chinese person the same respect I will give an African American or someone from the Caribbean. I give an Indian person the same kind of respect and honor that I would give any other person from any part of the world. I think as adults, when we can do this, it would be easier. It would be easier for us to be able to all get along, and as faculty to get along with students. That's a whole nother story. As I heard Dr. Brown speaking, I paid close attention to Dr. Brown and what he was saying. Students is a whole nother story. A lot of students need help. As Ms. Bland said, they need psychological help, they need counseling and things like that. But generally, for us here that are on this panel, it looks like 220 people, students and faculty. In order for us to move forward, we really definitely need to be colorblind, and we need to be culture blind. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hi, can I jump in on this one, please? I don't, this is, my desire is not to minimize anybody's experience. Everyone here has their own experience. But for me, I need you to see me. One of the things that we do not celebrate in this country is Blackness. We have a whole culture, and I'm not going to use the word separate culture because our culture is intertwined with all the other cultures in this country. As a matter of fact, we helped to build this country. We damn near built the whole thing by ourselves. Okay, so I need everybody to see me, see my brownness, see those things that make me who I am growing up as a young girl from North Carolina, my southernness, my accent, the way I cook my food. Those are things to be celebrated. And what I cannot stand for anymore as an adult is not having my culture celebrated. I get to celebrate my culture. I don't want to hear another police officer ever ask me, well, why do you have to have a Black police association? Because it's okay to have one, because we're celebrating our culture as Black police officers. It is nothing to be ashamed of. It does not mean that we don't love America. It just means this is our culture. You have your culture. We have an Irish American Association, the Asian Association, the Hispanic Association. But when it comes to Black associations, there's a problem. That is ridiculous. And I want to be seen. And I'm going to leave it right there.
I have a comment.
Sharon, can I jump in just to answer the question that was originally posed about what white professors could do? And this is coming from the non-academic side, student support side.
Yes, please do. Let me just take a real quick pause. I've had a number of private messages about can we extend this? For those of you that have to drop off, fine, but for those of you that are interested in staying on, I've got a little bit more time, so we'll just keep rolling, okay?
Thank you. So just to answer that and to touch on some things that just occurred this year, I was so elated when Dr. Pollard opened up in the fall about care and what it means to care, have a genuine care for people. I think oftentimes, especially in higher education, we go about our day as planned. So we go into the classroom just to teach. We serve just to address a need at that point, but care is not in the equation at all. And we have a very special population of students where they need to know that you care about them in order for them to be successful. It's no getting around that. I've heard in so many pockets that people feel like, I don't want to be a social worker. Well, guess what? The time has required us to do a little bit of that. Like, we have to show that we care about our students. And it's beyond, if you see them sitting in the back of the classroom with their head down, they may be tired, but they may be tired because they haven't eaten all day or they worked all night. And simply asking a question, like, we gotta get to that. And if it makes you uncomfortable, well, guess what? You're in the wrong line of wrong line of work at this point, because this is the only way that we can move forward. And all the things that we preach, that you got to be a speaker of your word. Your words have to match your actions. So that's what I have to say. Like, you got to engage. And if it makes you uncomfortable, get uncomfortable, or be okay with being uncomfortable, but you have to do it.
Hi, Sharon. This is Mary Robinson. Hello to everyone. One of the things that they teach in NA and AA is the first stage to getting to next is admittance. And that's something that I think we all need to first do, is find out where we are on the spectrum of this, is to admit where you are in order to move forward. We can't put anything into practice. We can't try anything until we admit to where we are. And we start that by sharing our stories in our classrooms with our students. And we tell them from where we emerge and where we want to go, and not be ashamed of our stories. The second thing is that Carl Rogers talks a lot about a way of being, and we each have a different way of being. So a lot of the work really needs to be done individually. Then we can move to some of the sensitivity training. I think I heard that mentioned, and then learning about different cultures, as well. But we really need to search ourselves and find out where we are on this particular spectrum and kind of admit that in order to move forward. And I think Dr. Brown, you mentioned that as well. Thank you.
Can I speak? Oh.
Go ahead, Grace.
Okay. Touching on what Dr. Shaw said about discomfort, I wanted to say that it's a really big thing to touch on. Discomfort is not a terminal disease. You're not going to die because you're uncomfortable.
Grace, say your name, please.
I'm Grace. Hi, I'm Grace. I wanted to say that discomfort is not going to kill you. Maybe it's because I'm a Black woman who grew up in a predominantly white town, or maybe because I'm allergic to literally like everything on this planet. I'm used to being uncomfortable. Like, I just am. I'm used to being uncomfortable, and it doesn't stop me. I've had to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations in the past few days. And either we need to trust the system at the college that we can have those uncomfortable conversations and not lose our jobs, or we need to decide we need to understand, if someone feels like they're going to lose their job, that needs to be fixed. Because I've had to speak up in meetings the past 2 days saying, the way that I said it is, if we talk about when the pollen count goes up, we ask people how they're doing. When the pandemic started, we asked people how they were doing. When someone's dog is sick, we ask how they're doing. And then you wake up and you expect people to come to work having been traumatized the whole weekend, not really just the whole weekend, their whole lives, their grandparents' lives, their great-grandparents' lives, and you expect them to just come to work and just be happy and smile and to just glaze over I said that I need 6 years of therapy for last week, just for this week. And for you to just come and expect people to not talk because it makes you uncomfortable. How dare you? You're not going to die because you're uncomfortable. It's never going to kill you. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Can I say something?
Thank you for sharing that. We have a couple more questions we got to get to, Christina.
Yes, we do.
I want to reply.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeanette.
There's one question that came up early on. What can white students do for other students of color and professors of color?
Dr. Brown, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. What can white students do? I think what white students could do is not be racist and do trifling stuff to people of color, number one. You know when you did it, you know when you're doing it, so don't do it. The other thing is when in positions where you're not sure about what to do, then you seek out mentorship from people of your own group right? So you think of like caucus groups. So like sometimes you got to retreat to your Black space, your white space, your male space, your gay lesbian space, or whatever that is. There's a like Professor Pruitt said, right? The Black Police Academy, Black Police Association is a caucus group, right? There's issues that are there. So you can create white, it's a group that we should do is white privilege group, right? Where you're deconstructing your white privilege. And that's something that should be done internally, but also with guidance and support from people who can help you usher you through that process. One goal that you might make as a white student is say, by the time I leave MC, I'm going to deconstruct my racism. I'm going to deconstruct my oppression. This is what I'm gonna have to do. When I was in graduate school, one of the things that I had to learn to do was I had to learn how to be a softer type of man, right? I could not be who I was and the way I was raised and then become a therapist and open myself up to, taking in people. So one of my goals was in graduate school was I had to make one student cry per week, right?
Okay.
I knew as a trainee, if I was I went to Eastern Shore, Maryland, and I was looking at Benita, and she hit me up. Well, we went to Eastern Shore. We on the Eastern Shore. If you ain't been over there, you can go. You can describe it later, right? I was working in Chrisfield, Pasco County, all that stuff. My goal was if I'm in a room with someone, they see me, and I'm dealing with these kids that are coming from the island where they drive their own boats over, and they're sitting there in pain. I have to be sensitive enough to allow them to express themselves with me. If I couldn't do that, I wasn't worth my weight as a therapist. So you have to set goals of whatever that is and then work diligently to deconstruct those. So those may be things you say to your teachers that I work with students all the time. So, Dr. Brown, I'm working on, my gender stuff. Me and my mama had a bad time and I got a lot of anger that comes out with women. And then we'll work on that. And so I think if you set goals and say, this is something that I'm going to work on and everybody in my circle is going to do the same thing, you do it. If you think you're coming from, high school, last in high school, and you're going to be able to make it to, Georgetown, and MC is going to help you do it, and you can, great. But if you can do that, you cannot be racist for 2 years and put that in you as well. So racism is not something, or any form of oppression, is not something we can't get rid of. It can be changed. It means you have to be wanting to do so and willing to put in the work. So, and I welcome those conversations with students, but for you to, the other stuff is like, cool, you'll get it when you get it, but that's not my fight right now to save your soul. Like, I'm not a preacher. So I'm not here for salvation. I'm here for correction and growth and liberation. So if liberation is the goal, we all walk in. If not, there's not a space that we're moving in. Other thoughts?
Thank you for that, Dr. Brown. There is we're going to go ahead and talk about some specific action items, some other specific action items that you could do. One of the things that I've been asked in one of those many messages that I received was, well, how do we support the struggle against police brutality? How do we join protest? What do we do? And so I want to talk a little bit about that. But I did want to, there was something on the message about, is MC ready to have a white caucus to discuss white privilege? And I wanted to say that we started this work discussing white privilege through a book that I had, a book conversation that I had through our spring equity dialogue, which was white fragility. And those conversations are ongoing. Mr. Matt Colburn and I think Elizabeth Schlackman, hopefully I'm right on that, are continuing these conversations. So Susan, if you want to hook up with them, I'll make that connection to do that. And I definitely believe that that white people need to talk to white people to have those conversations that will propel your own understanding further. Okay, so in terms of resources, hey, you know what? Join a protest if you can do so safely. If there's no problem with joining protests, just, please be safe about it. I have, as I said, 3 sons, 2 of them which participated in protests all weekend. one of them who was right behind the CNN camera, and I started getting text messages from my friends saying your son is down there, and I didn't actually know he was that close. So it's stressful, but people need to feel like if that's something that's going to give them a stake in this work and a stake in advocacy, then do so. I remember the first time I protested at the South African embassy against apartheid when I was in college. All right, and so then, but do it safely. Wear your mask. Make sure that you try to stay as not touch anybody, and bring some extra water bottles and some hand sanitizers. Also, you could help with a cleanup effort. I mean, there are a lot of rebuilding efforts that are out there to help with things that have been damaged during the protest. Demand police accountability from your legislators. And there are different types of accountability efforts that are underway. One is called Campaign Zero, another is Reclaim the Block. The idea is to move towards more community-led safety initiatives. And I'm sure Professor Pruitt has some things to say around community policing that she'd be able to. And then lastly, I just say, make a donation. I know that there are quite a few organizations. I have a friend that sent me a message. She made her first donation to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And I just thought that was, this is a person that does not make any donations. And so she sent it to me, and I knew that she was affected by this. I'm personally, I'm not advocating one or another, but for me, it's important to get people out of jail that have been wrongly jailed, and particularly when you protest. And so the Bail Project, the National Bail Fund Network, or some other areas. I'm not advocating for one another, but I'm just saying that these are some things that people have asked about, so I wanted to share those. Find a pop-up pantry. There are plenty of people, we're in a pandemic, there are plenty of people that still are not eating and don't have access to resources. So those are just some things top of mind that you could add. Professor Pruitt, would you like to jump in? And then Dr. Brown, I want to be respectful of the people that need to actually leave at 1:15, so.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna jump. I just saw a question, if you don't mind. It was about police departments. It just caught my eye from Ginger Robinson. I encourage, because I'm the director of community engagement, at least for another month, I encourage the public always to hold the police department accountable. For instance, I will tell community members, hey, listen, if you need to talk to the police chief, then ask to talk to the police chief and set it up. If there's a community group, join the community group. If one does not exist, then create it. And so I would say the same thing here. If we see that we have a need, we just need to create it. That's all. And we have plenty of opportunities. I follow the president closely because she's one of my sheroes. And I'm looking at these discussions that she has periodically with just different people from different areas of the community or different communities. And it's just so compelling. I've never seen anything like that anywhere else, except for maybe Howard University. So I love being at Montgomery College. I look forward to having more of these conversations. I'm glad that people are open to having them, because that's like a first step. I do want to add this one little thing, though. This was not a question. It was just a thought that I had. And that is, I am throwing the whole term implicit bias out the window, because I feel like people know exactly what they do and don't like. And that also means in terms of race. And so I'm just not for hiding behind anything else anymore. So if you know that you don't like white people, then admit it to yourself. If you know that you don't like black people, then admit it to yourself. We don't need somebody to come in and give us instruction on our hidden biases that are not really hidden to us when we're behind closed doors at home with our friends and family. We just need to go ahead and admit it so that we can, and if you're committed to handling that business, then you'll handle it. Thank you. I'm going to have to leave because I have another call, but thank you all, everybody. I'm looking forward to part 2.
All right.
No additional, are you, no additional thoughts at this point? Did you want to, were you going to continue to continue or close out?
So, Jeanette, were there any other questions that you had received?
The only question that privately was, when will there be a part 2?
I say another question on the email about, do you feel the media fuels hate even more because they're looking for negative stories for viewership? I guess you sent me several emails with questions. Anyone want to jump in on that one? The question is, do you feel the media fuels the hate even more because they're looking for negative stories for viewership?
That unfortunately is always true. Negative emotions are stronger than positive ones. I wish that wasn't true, but it is, right? Now, obviously, I'm a pale person, right? So I'm a pale white male or a pink male or whatever in the hell color I am, you know, and I teach a human course that happens to be called astronomy or astrophysics or whatever. And it's, you know, and we deal with otherworldly things, but we have to be culturally sensitive, you know, because everybody in the world that's ever been alive has contributed to astronomy and science. There ain't anybody that's ever been excluded, really. And some of the most important contributions have been made by almost everybody. And if you don't look at that, you don't have your eyes open. I'll shut up now.
And I think that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things that when we talk about what we can do is when you have an opportunity to bring in the voices of other people, bring those in. You know, I know I teach psychology, and throughout most of my career as a psychologist, I haven't had a Black psychology course, right? Most Black psychologists do not teach Black psychology. So I had to learn that on my own, outside, researching and finding pockets that would do that. If you're in a course and we're teaching, and even as a student, if you want to write something about your own people, right? Write something about who you are, where you're from. You know, I'm proud to be from where I'm from, right? I've grown, I've always been and continue to grow to be in that space. So now it's that point of, if we understand our own stuff and you appreciate your own, you respect other people's, right? So if we can start thinking about bringing those ideas into class, and as Dr. Williams said, right, everybody has a contribution. Make sure that's represented in your teaching, because then you can see yourself in space, and now there's a change. Then you can't say, well, you're stupid, you're this and that, whatever, because no, we're all equally gifted and talented in all areas. And I do appreciate this this forum, and you know, and thank y'all for inviting me to be a part of it, because it's part of the healing and the moving forward is being able to have safe spaces to talk about it. And we have to create those things for ourselves, right? And safe not meaning somebody was trying to do or not do, but just to talk about it with people that you respect and really honor, because we're part of the same community. And our community is deep. I don't know, sometimes people get how big, how many people we're dealing with per year. You know, it's huge. The footprint is huge. And the changes that we're making are long-term. So I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this. Thank you, Ms. Bland and Ms. Rojas for coordinating this effort, at least at the initial part. I'm sure a lot of other people played.
Brown, there was one additional question specifically for you, and I sent it to you via chat because it says, for Dr. Brown, there are some African Americans who have not experienced this injustice, not even extended family members. We know it's wrong and we stand in support, but I am ridiculed because the passion isn't there. What do I do when my being a Black supporter isn't enough for the movement?
Well, that's a great question. I say, Is this a black person? Well, if you haven't experienced it, God bless you. You are blessed, right? And I'm not saying that lightly. That means that you should be further and faster than everybody else, right? So if I've experienced racism, that means I have to spend time deconstructing that. And my energy is taken of healing from pain and trauma. If you haven't had that pain and trauma, that means you can start off here and go beyond it. So there's no shame of getting, like, I wish I would not have been harassed by the police. I wish I would have not had friends, murdered and people, women being pulled over, and my sister's scared to get pulled over at night because they're going to get molested by cops or just regular violence, right? So the fact that you don't have that experience, but are understanding of it and sympathetic of it, that means that you should be the one, when everybody else is working to work themselves out of it, you should be at the forefront of it. So I would say you need to focus, get deeper into the culture of the whole experience, and not just focus on the negative, but also the resilience. One of the things that we haven't touched on as much today is the resilience that everyone is demonstrating in the midst of all this, right? Despite all this, we're still going to work. We still got on this call. We're still, taking care of our families. We're still looking at the president talk ridiculous and, as a hate monger, right? Beginning to say we're going to stick dogs on people. And my talk, boy, we're like, shoot, man, we've been shooting dogs since we were little. So run a dog out here you want to, it ain't coming back the same. So those are the things that have been happening, right? That there's no space for that anymore. So for us who have not had that trauma, you are blessed. You are the next generation that other people have tried to protect you from. So you should thank your grandparents and parents, and then buckle down and really get into the study and the practice of activism, right? Of understanding these things and push everybody else along, because we need you up front, right? So it's not a supporter. You're not supporting something that you're a part of. You can't support women issues if you're a woman. You are one. It's like I said, right? You can't babysit your own kids. So you in it. Either you're gonna pick it up and run with it, or you're gonna stay on the sideline. But you're not staying on the sideline because you're here already. So I say go deeper, go harder, go faster.
Can I add something?
Yes, ma'am.
Racism is insidious. And everybody, to the person who posed the question, has a fingerprint for activism. You may not go down and march in front of the White House, but there are other ways in which you can be an active participant in positive change. Know your fingerprint.
Thank you. Okay. It looks like it's 1:24. Sharon, do you want to still stay on, or should we wrap this up? You're muted.
Sharon, unmute yourself, honey.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for, last week, was just, again, a terrible week for me in particular. I'm sure with some of you in particular too, knowing that I have these young men that I am raising. And the messages that I received from the college community about the need to do something. And I said to Jeanette and Jackie, thank you both very much in my office for helping me put this together. And Dr. Benjamin, thank you so much for referring Professor Pruitt and Dr. Brown, and putting something together rapidly. And it was not, we sometimes have, we plan things way far out. At first I was gonna have a pandemic conversation in October. And then I was like, wait a minute, we gotta do something quickly. So that 220 some odd people joined with 2 days notice or 3 days notice. Thank you so much for participating. We are going to continue this conversation. There are many people that have got a lot of private messages of people that want to talk again and want to have breakout sessions. So we're going to try and craft something. Donna, thank you for that idea of doing it, maybe weekly for the month of June. if that's something that's of interest. Lunchtime conversation, you know, and maybe we can get through more of some of these issues. So if there's any thumbs up for that, let me know. Other than that, I just thank you so much for being here. And if there are any other last minute remarks, please go ahead.
Yeah, could I say one thing really quickly? I wanted to touch on the thing about the media. And I'm talking about more than just the news media, but I'm just talking about TV and media in general. The images that we see are very powerful. And those images in themselves, the way the story is put together, a lot of the time it is showing a particular story, and the racism is there and it's insidious. We don't even realize it. So like automatically, when you have the protesting, you have the looting, but the images that tend to be shown are of Blacks looting, or people are referring to Black people. Even in the Black community, there's the automatic assumption amongst Black people that, oh, why did y'all go down there to loot? Y'all did this. So actually, I think that the media and the images they use are used to sway public opinion, and the way that people relate to people of color, as well as the way people of color relate to themselves. So I think we all have to be careful about those images. And I'm sure somebody has probably done a presentation on this, but yes, I think that the media does add to the problem with racism here.
Can I say something now? Let me buttress what she said. That's the same thing I'm talking about when I talk of denigration and self-denigration. The media denigrates people, and then they turn around and denigrate themselves, and then start acting the way they have been portrayed to act. So we need to do that kind of education again.
Úgyhogy így vagyunk, tegnap felraktánk ami lesz jövő héttől nekem iskola, felraktánk a tantárgyakat, meg mindent.
I think there's just somebody unmuted.
Someone is speaking, but they faded. They somehow faded.
I don't know, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up now. It's 1:27. Again, thank you so much, and thank you for those that did submit questions in advance. Please, if you have any additional questions and you do have some topics that you want to talk about, to put on the agenda for next week's lunchtime conversation, we can do that. So I'm going to just say definitively now, I know that I probably have something else that I'm doing next week, but we're gonna maybe 2 weeks. Jeanette, can we do this in 2 weeks?
Sure.
Okay.
You can add any ideas or additional questions to the evaluation.
Okay. All right, so 2 weeks would be June 16th. We'll do this again on June 16th. All right, thank you very much. Take care, everyone.